Hi, listeners, and welcome to my Holland Update. I'm Marianne Manderfield, Public Information Coordinator for the city, and today our guest is Dave Koster, General Manager for the Holland Board of Public Works. Hi, Dave. Welcome.
Thank you, Marianne. It's good to be here.
Thank you. Yeah, this is your first one.
It is. Yeah,
All right.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it.
Good. And today we're going to talk about Snowmelt, which the Energy Park is really the driving force behind the Snowmelt system in Holland.
It is today, obviously. It's been in our community for many, many years, but with Holland Energy Park, it gives us a lot of opportunities. So it's really kind of an exciting thing.
Yeah, and it's been here since 1988.
Correct.
So through a couple changes and
Yes.
several expansions.
Yes.
Give our listeners kind of a broad overview of how it works.
Yeah. Okay. So if you look at that system, it's unique in that we are able to take waste heat from our power plant, and we've had a power plant in the community for many, many years. Back in 1988, that power plant was the James A. Young plant, and that plant is now retired. Mm-hmm. So now with Holland Energy Park, we're actually taking waste heat off from the process of making electricity and utilizing that to heat up the water that goes down through the streets and the sidewalks of downtown Holland. And it actually is really unique in that aspect because a lot of other communities that might have snowmelt or have to use a boiler to actually make the hot water, and that uses a lot of extra fuel. So part of the power generation process is just this rejection of heat that happens, and so that we're able to capture that in Holland and do it very cost effectively here.
And energy efficient.
Absolutely. And so, essentially how that works, and we invite everybody to come through Holland Energy Park and really check it out firsthand. But with a power generation process, you're making electricity and you're using steam in a steam turbine to make electricity. Makes it that turbine spin around and make the generator produce the electricity. There's a lot of heat that's left over after the turbine does its work, and normally we have to reject that heat to a cooling tower. And people might see that sometimes as they drive by Holland Energy Park. It's fairly a large structure that sits out kind of near the east end of the property. But in the winter, instead of utilizing that, we can take some of that water and reject the heat underneath the streets and sidewalks there.
And how hot is that water that runs underneath the sidewalk?
It's actually only 95 degrees. And so, people find that kind of interesting that it only takes 95-degree water to do that. So, but one of the reasons is because it's designed that way with tubes underneath the streets and sidewalks that are about an inch in diameter. These tubes are. They're like PEX tubing. So if you might have done some work in your house with plumbing and you want to use PEX tubing, it's kind of this fairly flexible plastic tubing. It's only an inch in diameter, but it's only spaced about 6 inches apart. So that gives a lot of heat in that particular area, and it's designed to try to make the surface of the sidewalk or streets about 42 degrees. So it's just enough to melt snow. So it's not going to melt your soles of your shoes or anything.
You
like
don't want
that.
to walk barefoot.
No, yeah, exactly. Don't take that for granted that you can just do that. It's still pretty cold yet.
Right. Still need your shoes on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
And now, is there a temperature point where it doesn't necessarily work or work as efficiently? Because it can get obviously really cold here in Holland, sub-zero.
Right. Two things about that. When they were looking at the system, part of being able to use just the waste heat from the plant meant that there was a certain limitation on how hot that water was going to be coming out of the plant.
Sure.
And that's where the 95-degree point kind of comes in.
Okay.
But along with 95 degrees, that means that certain conditions in the wintertime are going to be very tough to continue to melt snow. So if it's under, say, 15 and 10 degrees, somewhere in that range, or if there's a really, really good amount of wind blowing, then you're going to dissipate that heat pretty quickly that's coming from the water, and it makes it tougher then to keep that temperature at just above 40 degrees on the surface.
Sure.
So the snow might have a chance to stick for a little bit. The system always recovers, and in most conditions it does just fine, but there are some extreme conditions, and people wonder about that. Is that a problem with the system? Is it not working well? It's working as designed, but it just was designed for most conditions, not all conditions.
Sure. And if I remember correctly, last year when we went through that week of the polar vortex, that it still worked pretty well.
It did. And one of the things that we found, I think, with the system too is, starting early in terms of getting heat in the ground from the loops of bringing that water
Okay.
there, even if the snow isn't falling at that time.
Okay.
Helps to provide kind of an inertia, so to speak.
Oh,
It
sure.
just keeps that ground warm, and so when that snow does come, it has a much better chance of keeping up with it. And with Holland Energy Park and the way it's designed now, we can actually start that pretty early in the season. And this year we had to start it pretty
Sure.
early in the season because we got some snow pretty
Right,
early. But
right.
yeah, we try to stay ahead of that. And the other thing that is interesting about the design is that we want the water to actually like go down underneath the sidewalks and underneath the streets. So a lot of streets have an asphalt that's not porous. You want the water to kind of like skim off to the sides.
Okay.
And you don't want the water to get below the street, because if it freezes just below the street, you'll get a lot of potholes and heaving
sure.
of the street. Well, it never freezes on the streets that are snow melted, and so actually that water seeps down through there. That's really good for preventing stormwater runoff, which goes to the lake.
Right.
But it also provides a very wet area right underneath the streets and sidewalks, which actually helps the conduction of that temperature from the tubes up to the street. So later in the year, kind of as the
Okay.
system's been running for a while, it actually seems to perform a little bit better kind of
Okay.
as the year goes on. Yeah.
Okay.
So
Interesting.
yeah, it is things that we've
Stuff-
learned about it
Yeah,
over
stuff
the
like
years.
that you don't really think about.
No, and
that's-
I think the engineers, even when they build it, there are certain things that kind of came from practical experience rather than theoretical. This
Sure.
is how it's going to work. Yeah, absolutely. So we've learned a lot.
Sure. Now, and one of the things, too, it doesn't just heat water, but it provides district heat.
Yeah, it's really
tell us about
an
that a little bit.
interesting opportunity. Because of the amount of area that we cover in the city, we're passing by a few different facilities that we've looked at for the potential of taking the snowmelt water and actually using it not directly to provide heat, but what
Okay.
it does is it provides an input to a heat pump. So
Okay.
a heat pump is a device that is used in a lot of houses and actually in a lot of businesses, where it takes groundwater usually at about 50 degrees and it converts that into heat. You can actually bring heat out of a 50-degree water source, believe it or not.
Wow.
So with snowmelt water, it's going out at 95 degrees, and once it's done its work of melting the snow, it's coming back to the power plant at about 75 degrees. Well, 75-degree water is really good yet for being able to drive a heat pump, and it does it even more efficiently than groundwater would. So what we've done at the Civic Center, the newly remodeled Civic Center, is we're actually taking the return leg there, that 75-degree water, and putting it through a heat pump there. And so we're getting very efficient. A heat pump itself is very efficient, but driven with 75-degree water makes it even more efficient.
Okay.
And so we're actually getting very good performance in terms of an energy source for heating that building. And we're also doing that at the Holland Energy Park itself in the administrative areas of the building. We're using that snowmelt water to drive a heat pump there as well. So that's just an opportunity for us to learn whether or not
Sure.
there's other ways that we can use some of this waste heat from the power production cycle. And actually with Holland Energy Park, we've really grown that potential from what the original system was. We could actually expand it with this new plant about 5 times what was the original system before Holland Energy Park was built.
Wow.
So we could either put that into snowmelt or
Okay.
possibly in a combination of snow melting and some building heating where that makes sense.
That's quite a bit. I mean, that's quite a
Absolutely.
big potential expansion.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And one of the reasons is people think about that and they ask the question, well, this plant is bigger than James DeYoung plant, but I also thought it was more efficient. So why do you have more waste heat, available if it's a more efficient plant? And the reality is that at the James DeYoung plant, we were only taking snowmelt off from one of the generators that was there. It was actually our smallest one.
Okay.
It was about a 10 megawatt generator at that plant. Well, this plant here at Holland Energy Park has about a 50 megawatt steam turbine in addition to the combustion turbines that are there. So it's actually a much bigger steam turbine that we're taking the waste heat from, and that's what gives us all this additional heat
Okay.
capacity for the snowmelt system.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you had mentioned earlier people can see it firsthand. So this month, the Energy Park is offering a couple free tours. A
Yes.
handful of couple free tours
Yeah,
at the end of the month. So-
Correct. Trying to get people over the holidays when kids are out of school.
Sure.
Get them a chance to get into the plant. When we built the power plant, it was really a big community effort to do that, and a lot of goals that were put in place. building a world-class resource, number one goal for us, but enhancing that eastern gateway to our community, and the architectural elements of the plant and the site plan and the park area is a way to do that. But we've also created a destination out of the facility, and inside the plant there's a whole area inside the red spine. So if you drive by and you see this red spine kind of running from east to west, that actually has a visitor center in it, and it's actually what we call Energy Alley. And there's a lot of interactive exhibits, fun exhibits there where people can come learn about their role in this larger energy equation. Our community has a 40-year community energy plan.
Right.
And so we're all working to try to not only produce energy efficiently, but use it as efficiently as possible. So we really work hard to try to connect with the community and our customers, bring them in to learn about energy and their role in the bigger picture. And so we're going to do that later this month. We'll have those tours available for you at that time later in the month.
And that I have been through that visitor center. It really is pretty incredible. It's very hands-on. It's very interactive. It shows you exactly how Snowmelt works in terms of the other operations within the energy park. It's for young kids and adults. It's fascinating.
There's a lot of different learning styles out there. There's a lot of different age groups, and what people would be interested in, how they want to interact, whether they want to just reach out and touch something and figure out how that works, or crank a crank on a generator. Maybe they want to read a lot of the history and a lot of the information that's on plaques. It's all there. And then there's also these views into the power plant in a very safe way. So we've got these windows, 4 windows along the spine that you can look into the process and actually see the equipment in there. So it's a wonderful experience. We worked with educators from around the community. We worked with personnel from Holland Museum and Windmill Island as well, who regularly have visitors come in, and they helped us design what that experience is. And we've had, I think we've had well over 5,000 visitors now to the facility in the time that it's been open, and a lot of school groups, a lot of community groups, and so we invite everybody to come out and find out. This is a community-owned resource, and the BPW is your community utility provider, and so we want to make sure that the community has a chance to really experience the facility and learn a little bit about energy and their role.
So they can go to Holland Board of Public Works website to register for those tours.
Yeah, but as more directly, they could actually go to hollandenergypark.com.
Okay.
Hollandenergypark.com is a special website that was created. It allows you to actually go right in and see what is going on in the various exhibits that are there too, so you can get a little bit of a preview to your visit. It allows you to schedule a tour, and so you'll have information about those open periods of time that are coming up later this month. If you can't make one of those, but you have a group in the community that maybe has an interest, maybe it's a scout group, or maybe it's a school group, or whatever it might be, a church group, you can actually go online and request a tour as well.
That's great to know.
Hannah Maiko is our visitor center and education coordinator, and she's there to help work with whoever wants to come in, and a lot of the school groups that come in, not only do they go up into the visitor center, but they also often spend time in our training room and maybe do a lesson plan with the students, or learn a little bit additional information and let the kids do something maybe hands-on even. So it's a real good interactive experience for anybody that wants to come visit.
Great. So hollandenergypark.com for that.
That's correct, yeah.
And if somebody necessarily didn't want to go out in the weather, but they wanted to view it from inside, they could go to the webcams that we have.
Absolutely. And myhollandcam.cityofholland.com actually has a number of webcams on them, and one of those is actually looking right down 8th Street, and so that's a great view of what's going on, and you can find out whether it's a good time to go down and do some shopping this winter season. Usually it is, and like I said, in most conditions you'll be able to walk those sidewalks and go enjoy those shops in a way that doesn't allow you, or doesn't make you put on really heavy boots and things like that, which is good. Yeah.
And another benefit I know for the community is the running community and the walking community. I know it's allowed people at Freedom Village to get out and take walks, and I know running groups around have got a clear path where they don't necessarily have to worry about the weather. They can get out and run and walk and a safe environment.
I think it's been very strategic and very good for the community, how it's been built out, and it's created a lot of interesting networks. The benefits, like you mentioned, are great for mobility. When you look at walking and jogging, we now have a continuous path that goes down to Evergreen Commons, so all the way down there you can walk along Central Avenue into the core downtown area. We continue to add additional sidewalks. This year there's work going on 7th Street, but the entirety of 8th Street, really kind of between Columbia and all the way down to the Farmers Market area by the Civic Center, that is all snow melted, both the streets and the sidewalks in those areas. And together, that has provided a really good way for people to get around this time of year, walking pets, walking themselves, jogging, like you mentioned. It's a very joggable area. The other thing I think that is important is it's created kind of a destination for the people to come, and that's helped the shop owners downtown.
Sure.
Another way the shop owners are helped out is, you're not dragging in the slush and the salt and things like that into the shops, so the cleaning is a lot easier. In our own infrastructure, it helps too. I mean, if you don't have roads that are constantly getting freeze and thaw, they're not heaving up, and so you're having to replace that infrastructure very often. You also are saving on the pedestals that are there, those light poles. They don't get corroded from all the salt and things like that. So there's just all these little benefits that people don't really think about that come from the fact that we're keeping that area really kind of clean from all the salt and slush and things like that. So it's really a great network now.
And it's been now with the 7th Street expansion, it's about 5 miles.
Yeah, just over 5 miles of walkable area. So you could pick a route. And if you walk a mile even, every day, you have 5 days a week, you can do a different route, and see something different every day. It's pretty incredible that way to have that for our community. It really is a great asset. And again, because of Holland Energy Park, it really has improved a lot. I think the other thing that people should know, when the old plant was operating, we drew the water right from Lake Macatawa. And that meant that you would get along with it some silt and some sediment from time to time, and that could cause issues. These tubes that the Snowmelt is carrying that water are very small, and so anything that would lay out in a tube could plug up that tube and cause an area of the system not to really work very well. Well, when we converted over to Holland Energy Park, we actually went through a process of flushing all of those tubes out over really a summer that we went and spent that time doing that. We also changed a lot of the valves out and renewed that. I mean, back to 1988, it's been 30 plus years now, and so it was time to address some of those valves. And now the system is running very clean and very smooth because the water is not coming from the lake anymore. It's a closed loop system, and so it doesn't add any sediment or silt. So you don't have any of that issue now with the new energy park. And not only that, we have the increased size, so there's a growth potential that's there. So a lot of ways the operation is better. We've also increased the efficiency of the pumps that are moving the water out of the plant. So it's interesting. People wonder what's the operating cost of this system, and the reality is that most of the cost of the system is building it out the first time. Putting all the tubes in the ground. The energy is pretty much free because it's waste heat. The only new energy that we're putting into it is pumping, the electricity that we use to run the pumps. And those actually are much more efficient with the new plant and can regulate up and down with the demand of the system, so we can actually operate at a very efficient point, which helps the cost of the system in the long run too.
Right. Dave, is there anything that would surprise people about the Snowmelt system that they don't know that?
Sure. Well, I think one of the things for me, having operated the system for a while, I never was really sure, how far this heat was getting into the system. The 95-degree water going out. At the far ends of our system now, we have again these lines going all the way down to Evergreen Commons and all through the city, all the way over to the Civic Center area. What's the temperature as it goes through the system? Are we losing a lot?
Sure.
There's these large transmission mains that carry the water, and then the tubing that I was talking about, the 1-inch tubing, is a much smaller tube that's for the distribution areas. So I was wondering, do we lose a lot all the way down? Well, we actually had a project, Pete Hoffswell at the BPW was really kind of the person behind this, he wanted to figure that out and see if we could create actually remote temperature sensing in the system.
Okay.
And so he created what's called the smart brick. You may have heard that.
Yes.
So all of our
Okay.
pavers that are downtown, are shaped, in a certain way. And so Pete actually came about some money from a grant from AT&T actually, and he wanted to design in this smart brick technology where we have a temperature sensor built into the brick, and we can place that then at different sidewalk locations. We can create new smart bricks and move them around the system. And what we found is that there's very little loss of temperature. It's really pretty cool. Yeah,
That's
I
pretty
would have thought
incredible.
going all the way down to Evergreen Commons. I think we were measuring there. We were seeing temperatures closer to about 89 to 90 degrees. So it only lost maybe about 5 degrees in
That's
that
not
stretch.
much at
And
all.
Not at all. So that was one of the most surprising things to me. But it was really cool to have this smart brick technology. So as we're operating the system now, we can kind of see what's happening, not just
Sure.
what the temperature leaving the plant is, but as the wind is blowing harder or the temperature's lower, what happens then to that temperature in
Right.
the brick? Are we actually losing a lot through the dissipation of the temperature
Right.
through the wind and the snow and things like that?
So what factors are
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
affecting
So
it?
that'll allow us to operate the system in a better way,
Sure.
maybe dial things in a little bit better. So that was kind of a real interesting eye-opener that really the smart brick technology allowed us to explore.
Well, thank you, Dave.
Yeah.
That's a wealth of information about Snowmelt and how it works. I would encourage people to sign up for a tour if they haven't been in there already. And if you want to see a video or learn a little bit more, you can go to the website, snowmelt.cityofholland.com. Anything else you want to tell our listeners?
No, actually, just hopefully you enjoy it this time of year. We
Right.
don't, as we're recording this right now, there's not snow on the ground, but it's
Right.
right around the corner.
It is. It
and
always is.
So please get out and enjoy this wonderful asset that's in the community. And yes, please come down and see us at Holland Energy Park. We'd love to have you there.
Great. Well, thanks, Dave.
Thank you for your time.
Sure. And until next month, this is My Holland Update.